Hello, everyone, and welcome back to WABAN, the movie and TV show podcast where an expert on the subject discusses things with an average viewer. I am your host, Nim, and today I am joined by Willem Dafoe.
He farts a ton in this, right?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Of all the things you could,
right? Or the light is mine to keep, or whatever he says.
Yeah. Which I don't. There's something weird with that light, man.
Is there?
I don't know. Like they have some weird sexual thing going on with that light. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
this.
Okay. There's the whole thing of like Tommy. Was it Tom and Tommy? Right?
Yeah.
Tommy, the new one. He's definitely like hallucinating at least some of that, right?
Oh, for sure. See, I mean, I think the whole thing of this is like, at least the way it's definitely one of those movies where it's like, there's probably a bunch of different ways to interpret it, but like the way I was viewing it was like all of the weird stuff that doesn't seem realistic is like hallucinations.
Mm-hmm.
So like the mermaid and all that, would be just kind of like weird hallucinations or fantasies,
right?
Mermaids, stuff like that.
Weird tentacle creatures.
Yeah, because there's even like a point where he imagines seeing like the dead body of the guy he killed.
Well, that's what I'm curious about here, right? It's never clear what's a hallucination and what's real, because like obviously there's him imagining the guy that he killed, which is obviously an illusion. But then there's him finding the head of the guy that Tom supposedly killed in the crab trap. Did he imagine that?
Yeah. Something like that is a little weird. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did he imagine the mermaid?
I would say yes. I mean, I always kind of, my whole thing was like, it's more of like most of those weird things like that are just kind of weird hallucinations. That's kind of my view on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of somewhat reminds me, only a little bit, not completely, but somewhat reminds me of like The Shining, in that it's like being stuck in one location over a long period of time, going insane, and like weird things happening, not sure what's real, what's not, kind of thing. Because there's stuff like that in that movie too, where it's like stuff that like might be hallucinations, but you're not sure, is this place haunted, or is this actually just like a hallucination? So it kind of reminded me of something like that, where it's like it's like not fully defined whether it's which is which. It's kind of like for the viewer to decide, which I think is really interesting. Because I mean, I honestly, a lot of those elements of like the mermaid stuff and the weird tentacle monster thing, I honestly didn't know about in the movie. Like I knew the movie was like these two guys going insane, because they're like trapped on an island. I knew that was like, I didn't know a lot of the other stuff, like how far it went, so it was interesting to see that and kind of be surprised by it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, because like obviously neither of them are normal. Like, doesn't he catch the Tom just standing in with the light? Just he was nude, right? That was the implication.
Yeah. Now whether he actually was, who knows? I mean, he probably was. But
I mean, that's like far from the weirdest thing that wouldn't be a hallucination in this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's there's definitely a weird sexual aspect to it. think that I still don't fully understand how to define or how it like how to make sense of, but it's definitely there. I mean, yeah, there's a few obvious parts of it that are, but
like they seem to delve into the idea that they're alone with nobody else on an abandoned island with like no human contact besides each other. So it's just kind of like, okay, the other guy is gone. Might as well do something.
Yeah. Well, and he's like holding his little like mermaid thing that he found.
Statue, little icon.
That was hidden in the bed, which was probably hidden there by a previous person who has been there, likely for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and then there's like that scene he was definitely imagining, obviously, the mermaid, and that scene was pretty obviously like just an imagination thing, because, you know, there's a reason he was imagining things. It's very like those kind of scenes were very like kind of uncomfortable.
Yes, definitely.
Make you uneasy, which I mean is the point for sure. It's supposed to make you go, oh, okay. Like it's not, yeah, you know. Like I think that this movie is definitely supposed to be unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, I mean, you know, it's kind of a psychological horror kind of in a way, you know. That's the whole idea of it, is the slow descent into madness. That despite how hard it is to watch, you also can't look away from. You know,
that's a really good way to describe it.
Yeah. It's intriguing, but it's also disgusting. I don't know, like
as soon as you said disgusting, my mind flashed to him carrying their chamber pots to dump them, and me just like, I know he's gonna spill them on himself. I just know it. There's no other way that this goes. It's gonna happen. And he goes to toss them, and it gets all over him. It's like, no.
Yeah. It's definitely like, because it's interesting, because like at first it was like maybe halfway or so through the movie when you get to the point where they're like, oh, the 4 weeks is up tomorrow, and I was like, oh, the movie's only like half over, so I have a feeling that nobody's gonna show up. Something's gonna happen, and then like there's a really bad storm, so nobody can I was like, yeah. And that was also, and another thing too is like it's also implied that like when he killed the bird was when stuff really started to go bad.
Yep.
When the storm came and they weren't able to, you know, they really started going insane, because, you know, he said early on, he's like, it's bad luck to kill a seabird.
The scene of him killing the bird, though, where he just grabs it and just smashes it against the rock over and over, and it's like, you can stop, please.
It's dead. It's, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it's like the bird kind of like not attacks him, but it kind of like lunges towards him in a way that just freaks him out, and then that's his, you know.
It's very, very brave for a bird. I mean, I know it's a seagull, so like it's not quite as skittish as anything.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But immediately after he kills the bird, there's the weather vane spinning, so the wind changes direction, and then they talk about, the wind changed, there's a storm brewing. It's just
yes, it's like shit. Literally as soon as he kills the bird, storm coming. Yeah, and it's I really like this. It does a good job at the just the slow progression of things, you know, because at the beginning of it, he's a very Robert Pattinson's character, the young one. He's a very, very reserved, quiet. Seems like an average guy, very timid, kind of, you know, he's just the new guy trying to, you know, work hard, whatever. Nothing unusual. You know, Willem Dafoe is the unusual one at the beginning. He's just the weird old guy, you know, who's the weird old guy who has all the experience, whatever. But as it goes on, it gets by the end of the movie, but it slowly progresses to the point where by the end of the movie, Robert Pattinson's character almost seems like he's the weirdest one. He's the most fucked up one.
Yeah.
You know, in a way, it's like it just like how you slowly get to that point is interesting. Cause like, you know, it starts out simple. He's like, he doesn't drink alcohol. He's like, I don't drink. And then the one time he decides to drink, finally, it's like, oh, it's one more day. Might as well take a drink. And he's like, I won't report it. And he's like, fine, whatever. Takes a little drink. And then it's like sudden downhill. And, he drinks more and more and more until he's literally just carrying a bottle everywhere he goes while he's working, like he's sitting there working, like shoveling whatever he's doing, takes a drink,
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of becomes this downward spiral. But it also kind of makes sense in a way of like, it would be easy to go into that downward spiral of like alcoholism in this situation because life sucks. What are you going to do to make yourself feel good and feel happy? That's all you got, to do that. So it makes sense.
I keep thinking, because, you talk about this downward spiral of now this character's the insane one and not the one from before. There's like a scene right after, just like, oh, nobody came. We have to start rationing. And then William Dafoe goes, it's been how many days or weeks since they didn't come, and I've been telling you to start rationing, but you haven't.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, that was like 8 seconds ago. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and it kind of ruins your perception of, wait, how long has it been? Because by the first like half of the movie, it's pretty clear that it's about 4 weeks. It takes place about 4 weeks of time. Second half of the movie, there's no telling how much time passes. It's just, is it 2 days? Is it 2 months? I don't know. It's very ambiguous.
And I'm not sure if it's, Tommy going insane and him actually like not being able to tell time anymore, or if it is Tom just gaslighting him and being his own brand of insanity. Because then there's the scene where he tries to leave on a boat. Tom chops it out with the axe and goes chasing after him back to the house. And then suddenly Tom says, like, they calm down for a moment. Tom goes something about like how Tommy chased him with the axe.
And how he chopped the boat up and chased it with the axe. And I remember that scene. I was like, wait, wasn't he the one who chopped the boat up and chased him with the axe? But he's saying it's the other way around. And I was like, wait, what?
It's just like, it does such a good job of making you feel as the
they don't like acknowledge
one.
it. They don't like acknowledge it. Like, oh, you're the one who did that. No, it's just normal in the conversation. I'm like, oh, okay. So all perception of reality is just kind of thrown out the window where it's like, who knows what's happening.
I think like the most logical idea is that we're like viewing it from Tommy's perspective, and so
yeah, for sure.
So like we're getting all of his hallucinations.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was viewing it, where it's like we're not seeing the literal exactly how things happened necessarily. We're just seeing it from the main character's perspective of like how they're seeing it, how Robert Pattinson's seeing it, character is seeing it. Yeah, I think that makes the most sense, at least to me.
But it just makes it so that you really get to experience him going insane firsthand.
Oh yeah, which is just it's just crazy. Like,
it makes it
I don't
so
know.
Confusing.
It's difficult to describe the experience, because it's like it's so confusing. Where it's like a lot of times you're not even sure. Sometimes you're not even sure what they're talking about. But it's like it doesn't matter. I don't think you necessarily have to constantly understand what they're talking about, every phrase they're saying. It's like, because at the end of the day, it's like, it's more the experience of it that you're getting. It's like, as long as you're feeling the experience of it, which the movie does a really good job at making you feel, that's all that kind of matters. Yeah. And I do like some of the general design choices too. The most notable ones being obviously that the movie is in black and white, and the fact that it is a smaller, not as wide, not a very wide aspect ratio. I don't know the exact aspect ratio. It's either I think it's like somewhere between 2:3 and 1:1 aspect ratio, potentially. But either way,
it seemed pretty close to 1:1.
It was very close. Yeah, I think it's less than 2:3. I think I saw somewhere that it was like somewhere in between the two, in between a 2:3 aspect ratio and a 1:1.
Yeah, now that I think about it, it did pretty much look like a square.
Or a 3:4, yeah. It was very, yeah. Which is, I think, very effective because it kind of adds to this feeling of almost being trapped, of like this claustrophobia. You don't have as much room on either side of the screen as you normally would in a movie. So it's like you're just kind of enclosed in this one location. Very claustrophobic. I really like the black and white look they go for. It really adds to the lighting style they use, which is very much about like this deep contrast and deep shadows for the lighting, which works really well in black and white, I think, you know, because it's like when you have no color to focus on, all you can focus on is like the lighting, the intensity of the light. So whether it's, you know, so then you can really, it really works to really do a deep contrast with the lighting, where like the darks are really dark, the lights are really light on the screen. Yeah. And a lot of the lighting is feels very natural to like, oh, there's only one light source, so it creates these like shadows everywhere, you know, like there's just a candle lit and that's the only thing that's lighting up the room, you know?
Yeah, like when they're at the little dinner table.
Yeah, and it's like there's just like a candle in between them, and that's all that's lighting the room. So you get some lighting directly on their faces, but everything else kind of the shadows kind of go out around them. And I really like that lighting style. I think it works really well. It adds to the creepiness of it. Like there's certain scenes, like there was one scene that I specifically remember where Willem Dafoe has a super long monologue about, forget exactly what it was. It was like he was like yelling at Robert Pattinson. I forget exactly what he was saying. It was like this whole big thing about like yelling at him what he's going to do to him if he defies him. I don't remember what it was specifically.
The telling him that he's in charge basically, and that he needs to do what he says, and blah blah blah. Yeah. It might have been that one, or it might have been another. It was like this one was later in the movie, like in the second half, so it might have been a different one. But yeah, and either way, whatever it was like the lighting, the way the light hit his face really made him look very much more menacing than he would have in like a normal, in a more normal, like even lighting. It just gave these like creepy shadows on his face, but then at some points made him look almost sad, but at some points really angry and menacing. It was like a weird, I don't know, it held on one shot for this entire like monologue that he has. And at certain points in that monologue, I was looking at him like he's about to kill somebody. At certain points I was looking at him like, oh, he's scared. And that, like, I don't know, it was just like I felt like this almost wide range of emotions just
in just that one is like the lighting, and obviously his performance added to it too. You know, Willem Dafoe's acting added to that as well. But there was just something about, I don't know,
Like
it's hard to describe.
highlighting different facial features, I guess.
Yeah. It was just very, the look of it was very effective to me. I mean, there's a lot of examples of that in this movie, I think, where it's just the the style really, I think, just works. The black and white style works really well for the movie. Because, it is an interesting kind of thing. Because it's like, oh, like how often are there black and white movies anymore? Like never, right? And I think a lot of people kind of view it in the sense of like, oh, why would you make a black and white movie when you could make it in color? We have color now. Like, to me, I don't think it's all about what's like outdated and what's modern. I think to me, it's like it should be more about like what fits the movie, what really adds to the style. A good example of this is like back in the day, they kind of did that a little bit more, where like in like maybe the 60s or so, where it was like, okay, they had color. There were some movies that were in color and some that weren't. It was just kind of like depending on, like Psycho, for instance. Alfred Hitchcock directed Psycho in like the later 60s, I think. And a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's movies before that movie even came out, were in color, but he chose to make that one in black and white. Like a lot of people watch that movie and it's like an older movie, so they just kind of assume, oh, it was in black and white because it was old. But if you actually look like at the time period, like Alfred Hitchcock had already done movies in color, but he chose to do that movie in black and white. It was to add to the look and the style of the movie, and it, I think it worked. I think it, that look, I can't imagine Psycho being in color. It just wouldn't have worked to me. Like, I mean, I don't know if you've probably never seen that movie, but
I haven't, but I get what you're saying.
And I think it's the same with this movie, where it's like, yeah, they could have done this movie in color easily, but I think it just wouldn't have the same effect. It also of somewhat adds to the feeling of it being old too, because like obviously it takes place in like, I think in the description it says it takes place in the 1890s. So I guess it kind of adds to that like old timey look to it, but still,
Yeah, it's like changing the art style of something so that it feels more emotionally heavy for the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, like obviously, there's a lot of movies that like, yeah, you definitely should do it in color. Like a big fun superhero blockbuster. Yeah, do that in color. So it's really colorful. That adds to the fun. But but for something like this, where it's supposed to be this kind of like deep, dark, psychological thing, it's like taking out the color can add to that feeling. Yeah. No. One thing that is interesting about the movie, I think, is like there's no. You don't really like either of the characters, right?
Yeah, definitely not. No.
Like I love their acting. Their personalities are interesting, at the very least, interesting to watch. But like, early on in the movie, I'm a little bit like rooting for like Robert Pattinson's character. I'm like, yeah, he just seems like a nice new guy who's just trying to make an honest living. He's not very talkative, whatever. Okay. But then by the end of it, I'm just like, when spoiler alert for the end. I mean, obviously, when he's getting freaking eaten alive by seagulls.
Yeah.
I'm not like it's gross looking and it's a little like, what the fuck? Like visually that shot is just fucked. But it's also kind of like, yeah, that's what he gets. Like, oh yeah, that's what you get. I don't know. It's almost kind of like it's almost satisfying in a way where you're just kind of like, yep. I don't know.
I kind of get what you mean.
In a way, because you're like, you
I
know.
mean, like, yeah, he killed the other guy, and he let someone else die in front of him from long ago. It's just like, okay, I guess this is the karma, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
and you watched
exactly.
him murder that bird brutally. Like, that was, ugh.
Yeah. Well, right. It's like this is the birds finally getting their revenge.
Mhm.
But yeah, that final shot really just
That, yeah, it's gruesome.
it's yeah. I really was not expecting it because I was wondering where they were going to end it. You know, because it was. You know, he has that shot. He finally goes up into the top of the lighthouse and looks at the light. I was like, okay, this is the thing the movie's kind of been hinting at and building up towards. Ever since the beginning of the movie, it's like you're not allowed up in to see the light, and he's constantly kind of like looking up at it, like curious, right? So you're like, oh yeah, that's gonna be a big thing, climactic thing at the end. He's gonna look at the light. So for a second, I was like, he's gonna look at the light. It's gonna be amazing, whatever. And then it's gonna cut, maybe like to like the reaction on his face, maybe. Okay. That didn't happen. He freaking fell down the stairs, and I was like, oh, maybe it'll. And then it kind of, I think it faded to black or something. Maybe
it did. Yeah, it wasn't like.
And I was like, okay, that's the end. That's okay. That's the end shot. He just falls down the stairs and he's dead. Okay. And then all of a sudden, it cuts back. Fades back up to that final shot, and I was like, oh shit.
Like, oh,
never mind.
Hello, I didn't expect you.
That's fucked. It's a fitting ending. It makes sense in the context of the rest of the movie. There's like, oh, like the whole thing is like all this bad stuff is happening because he killed one of the seagulls. Like now they're finally getting their revenge, So it makes sense, but it's like, oh, because I was also wondering, I was like, is there any chance that this movie ends with like one of them making it out alive, like getting out on, like leaving on a boat? Is there? I was like, I don't know. I was debating on that throughout the movie. I was like, are they gonna do that? I was like, I had a feeling Willem Dafoe was gonna die, just because like he's the old guy. I don't know. But I was like, I don't know, how's it going to end? But I think that's a much more interesting ending than it would have been if it ended with him like leaving the island.
Right, definitely. I keep thinking about the moment that he's looking at the light. And he's just staring straight at it. And he's like jittering around as if he's like seeing something like holy and divine, or like
blood all over his face.
Yeah, earth shattering and shocking, and then he falls. And he has his hand reached out the whole time, and all I'm thinking is he's just burning his hand on the lamp, isn't he?
Oh yeah, for sure, probably, because he's like, I must reach out and touch it.
And they just hold his hand in the fire as he's like, you watch his reactions of like, it does almost seem like pain as he's like shaking and in awe and fear of it.
But is he perceiving it as pain, or is he perceiving it as pleasure? Because he's so fucked up in the head at this point, and he's built it up so much in his head of like this amazing light that he wants to see. Like I don't know. Like it is painful for him, what? How is his brain perceiving it at the moment?
Right.
Though?
There's so many things that just aren't clear.
Right, and that's the idea. That's the point. It's, I don't know. Yeah, I generally just really like. I think this is just a really well put together movie too, as far as just even simple things like cinematography, editing, and stuff. Like it does a really good job of utilizing the unusual aspect ratio, and like framing the shots well in that. It's really overall like good looking movie. Obviously very well acted. I think this is like, it's, this is a movie that I'm watching and I'm like, did people really think that like, I don't know, because I remember when like, it was announced like, oh, Robert Pattinson was going to play like Batman and stuff. It was like, oh, Robert Pattinson, what? Like, is he good enough of a bad actor and stuff? And I'm like, this movie is enough to show me, yeah, he's a really good actor. Like, I don't know, he was really good at acting. His acting was really good in this movie.
He's the vampire in Twilight, right?
Yeah.
So that's where all that came from.
That's where all the criticism comes from with him, where it's like, okay, he was in some bad movies once. Like, he's been in other like people have talked about different other roles he's been in where he's been really good. So it's like, he's a good actor, just happens to be in some bad movies. Like, the movies he's like most well known for are like Twilight. So, you know.
That would give anybody a bad rap.
Hey, exactly. It's like, no matter how good you are at acting. Yeah. I think there's like a lot of clips online of him like making fun of the Twilight movies, talking about how stupid they are.
I would love. It's actually to funny. See those.
I watched like a YouTube video that was like a compilation of it, and it was funny. It's like he's like making fun of like stupid like plot points in the movies, like, oh, this character did this, like, what, that's really stupid, why would you do, you know, like it's just like, I forget all of it, but it's just funny. I mean, I've only ever watched the first Twilight, I like years and years ago, and it wasn't good, so never watched it.
Years and years ago, there was a moment where my mom and my sister wanted the whole family get together and watch like all of them at once. And it was just mind numbing. I hated it. And eventually I'm just like, I'm done with this. I'm leaving.
It's like one of the most awkward romances ever. It's like, it's so weird. But yeah, anyways, this movie, Lighthouse, very good. Good acting all around.
Yep.
Honestly, like, it's crazy because like Robert Pattinson is an actor where like I feel like he's chosen for a role and people are like, really? But that he does really good, and they're like, oh, like with Batman, or like even this movie, like if you described to me what the role was and said, oh, it's played by Robert Pattinson, like a few years ago, I'd have been like, really? He's playing that kind of role? Like, I feel like Willem Dafoe, like you hear that he's playing like this old lighthouse keeper guy, like you're kind of like, yeah, that fits. Awkward, yeah. That sounds like Willem Dafoe. Okay, that fits what his acting style, you know, he definitely would pull that off well. But like you hear Robert Pattinson, you're like, really? Huh. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, he's good.
You talking about acting just put it in my head. They really needed like 2 good actors for this because it's only 2 characters. There's only 2 people to judge. Yeah.
This is one of those movies where getting the acting right has to be like, it's essential for the success of this movie. Like, I think there's like some movies where like you can get away with having like some okay, average, mediocre acting, and it's fine because like the focus is on like the action or like whatever. But this is a movie where really high quality acting is a must. Like, if the acting was mediocre, average, whatever, it really would have made this movie way worse. You know what I mean? Like, that's such an essential part of this movie.
Yeah.
Because I mean, a lot of the movie is literally just them having conversations with each other and like yelling at each other and whatever, you know, whatever, depending on the scene. A lot of it's literally just these little conversations that, you know, they're having a conversation at dinner and what's all the emotions of going on in that conversation. And, you know, you really got to pull that off as an actor. And they both did very good.
Yeah. It all came together very nicely.
Yeah, I think this is one of those movies where, like, I think I don't have any issues with it, really. Like, is it a movie I would watch often? No, because it is kind of like hard to watch just because with all the insanity. it does have, I mean, it does have some like funny-ish moments and lines, but it's not like overall, you know, it's obviously very just kind of messed up, depressing, horrifying movie. And it's like very mentally draining, you know, as a movie where like by the end you're just kind of like, okay, I need to take a step back. But so it's not a movie I would watch often, you know. But it's still a movie that I think is like, you know, I don't think there's any real way to improve it, you know. Like I think some movies are like that where it's like it does exactly what it was supposed to do very well and effectively.
I honestly, the only complaint I have is that it is so confusing and unclear as what's happening, but that's the point. And
right,
it's just
exactly. That's the thing. Any like complaint I could have is kind of like well, that's kind of the point, and it's supposed to make you feel that way. Like, oh, this scene, like really disgusted me. Oh, wait, that's kind of the point. It was supposed to disgust me. Okay, well, you know, like how can you like criticize something for doing what it's supposed to, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's just like I like to figure things out and be able to connect all the dots and see the big picture, but you can't. It's not designed to be able to do that. It's designed
for sure.
Just
yeah,
to make
exactly.
you confused.
Yeah. And I think I realized that at some point in the movie early on where I was like, you know what? I don't need to overanalyze anything. I literally just need to just experience it. Just be in the moment with the movie and experience the emotion that the movie's trying to convey in each scene, you know? Even if I don't fully understand what the conversation they're having is all about. Or like why they're saying a line that they said, you know? Like even if I don't fully... Because like there were certain parts where I was like, wait, what are they talking about again? I'm like, oh, okay. Like I don't know, there was literally parts like that where I was like... but it didn't matter because it was like I was in the emotion of it, kind of. So it works.
It really does, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious. So, how similar it is to a different movie? So, okay, so. In going here, you can tell us what happened. Yeah.
So I was told, watch The Lighthouse 2019. Okay. I look it up online. I find The Lighthouse. Okay. I find a movie. I find a place to watch it. I start watching it. It's a different movie. It's not quite in black and white. There's a lack of color, which is probably why my scrambled, tired brain missed it at first. But then I was like, I don't think either of these guys are William Dafoe, and William Dafoe is pretty dang recognizable at any moment, so something's wrong here. Then I noticed it's from 2016, not 2019, so I was like, crap. I watched an entire 2-hour movie, and now I need to watch another 2-hour movie because I watched the wrong one.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a movie title, which I did not know this until you told me before we started the podcast. Yeah, it's a movie called The Lighthouse from 2016. And it's a British movie. It's like made by BBC or something like that.
That's pretty good, not gonna lie.
And yeah, you actually liked it, so
yeah, I mean,
but so wasn't the plot similar?
So 2 guys, both named Tom, lighthouse keepers, get stranded by a storm. Yes.
Yeah. So okay, here's my theory too on that. Is that when I was reading the description of which I did not watch the 2016 one because you know I just found out about it like right before we started recording the podcast. I didn't know it existed until then. I was reading the description before we started the podcast, and it says based on a true story. So my theory is that both movies are based somewhat on the same true story of like 2 people who were on a lighthouse, didn't get relief when they were supposed to, ended up stuck there for months. You know, like let's say like that happened because like why else would both of them have they all have the same names?
I mean, yeah, it makes sense.
Either that or the 2019 movie is somewhat based on the 2016 movie. Like, somewhat a remake in a way. Like an American remake, kind of. You know?
It is
That's
far too different for me to call it a remake, but yeah, it could
well,
be.
yeah, but I mean, a lot of times remakes are very different. Depending on, you know, like we watched earlier on this podcast, The Thing.
Right.
Which is technically speaking a remake of The Thing from Another World, which is a movie in like from the 50s or whatever. It's very different. Like the whole the monster doesn't have the shape-shifting ability in the 50s movie that it does in the 20, which is kind of like the whole point of the alien, is that it's like it can look like other people, so you don't know who's an alien, who's not. So it's like very different, but it's like technically considered a remake, even though it's because it's kind of based on the original one. Although
I don't like that it is though. If it's so different, that seems stupid to me.
Yeah, it's like it's not really a remake because it's not the same story, but it's a similar story. But yeah, it's funny because like I was looking at, you know, Google Images after like of this movie, and like I see pictures from the movie of them like drinking together and laughing, drinking together and stuff, and I'm like, that just seems very similar to the movie. But
there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like very interesting.
I don't want to go into detail because I don't want to spoil anything for you if you ever plan to watch it, but
yeah, and like I might watch it at some point, like because I'm very intrigued by it. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. I mean, I guess like it makes sense if you're going to make a movie titled The Lighthouse. It makes sense that it would be about two dudes stranded on an island with a lighthouse. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's the most logical plot to have for a movie titled The Lighthouse.
I suppose, yeah. Or
that's
my D&D brain immediately goes to, it's either A, there's something special about this lighthouse and it's like a beacon in like other ways besides just being a lighthouse, you know? Or it is the lighthouse, like lighthouse is like a code name, or like just how people refer to something that is very clearly not a lighthouse. Like it's some like high fantasy or like sci-fi thing, entity, living or not living, that's just exists.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I'm actually going to look this up. Is The Lighthouse 2019 based on... I'm literally looking this up. Based on The Lighthouse 2016. There you go.
Oh, it is?
The Lighthouse... Based on The Lighthouse? The Lighthouse is a surreal journey into despair and isolation, but it was inspired by a very real-world event despite its ambiguous plot. Despite the surreal, otherworldly style of Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, the film is loosely based on the true story of a pair of Welsh lighthouse keepers. Okay, so I think they are both based on the same true story.
Okay, makes sense.
I think that's what it is, because... yeah, for sure.
So what I'm thinking is the 2019 one is like the one that took a lot of liberties and didn't like follow the story as we know it from then.
Yeah.
But the 2016 one is the one that actually does stay true about the story.
Right. Because, I mean, it ends with this... You know, the 2019 version ends with both characters dying. And I don't know that that's the other way the other one ends, you know, or like the way the true story ends.
Right. Avoiding spoilers, what I can say is it is much more clear as to what's happening even when you are experiencing those hallucinations. It's much more realistic.
Yeah, it's not as like, what the fuck is happening?
Right.
You don't see mermaids and stuff.
No mermaids. Closest
Darn.
thing is a weird scene with crabs, but
Okay. I'll keep that in mind if I ever watch it. And you said it's probably about the same length?
about, yeah, just under an hour, or just under 2 hours, an hour and a half.
It definitely seems like it loses the it doesn't have the I almost feel like the style and look of the 2019 is better just from images, you know what I mean? Cuz like
I can see what you mean. It is like very devoid of color throughout the whole thing, though. Not quite black and white, but
yeah. I feel like the 2019, based on the images I've seen on Google Images, just seems more like it has a very distinct look to it. Very, whereas the other one seems more like, looks like an average movie, You know what I mean?
Right. It does do a lot of things very well, though, in terms of watching the characters go insane.
Right, and you'd say the actors are pretty good too.
I don't think I'm very good at judging that, but as far as I can tell, yeah.
So would you say the actors in 2019 are better or 20? I mean, it's probably the thing is they're probably very different in what they're going for, so it's hard to. I'm just asking because I'm just genuinely intrigued.
I'm so terrible at judging acting unless it's like really bad, then I can tell, but it's the same to me because I'm not a connoisseur or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, if I watch it, I will give my opinions in an episode of the podcast, even if it's like a quick little here's what I thought. Because we're not going to make a whole podcast about the Lighthouse 2016.
Another Lighthouse movie.
We already talked about a Lighthouse movie. I feel like it's obviously there are differences, but I feel like it's similar enough to where it's no reason to do another one.
Now I'm curious, how many different movies about just a lighthouse are there?
There was movies I saw called Lighthouse when I was looking up. There was a 1999 version movie called Lighthouse. There was one from the 50s or something, or 60s called Lighthouse. Not The Lighthouse, just Lighthouse.
The Light at the Edge of the World, Tower of Evil, another The Lighthouse, 2098, To the Lighthouse.
Wait, there's
The Lighthouse, 1998. There's a third. Oh no, Two Argentina Sisters, so it's not the same.
Right.
But it is called The Lighthouse.
That's 1990 what?
8. Shutter Island, Haunted Lighthouse, Lighthouse Lane.
It's very interesting.
There's a lot more than I thought.
That's funny.
The Invisible Lighthouse, and it doesn't have a picture. It's perfect.
Interesting. Yeah, well, so there's apparently a lot of Lighthouse movies. Let's just go.
I'm sorry, you were just talking about, we're not going to do another movie about a lighthouse. I'm just like, can we do all the movies about a lighthouse?
Let's just as I say, next week, we're watching every Lighthouse movie we can find and talking about all of them in one podcast.
That'd be horrid.
Ranking all the any Lighthouse movie.
That'd be great. So stupid.
Yeah, the lighthouse, the actual lighthouse itself in the 2019 one, the images, it looks very different.
Oh yeah, it's
on sticks. It's not even a.
Yeah, 2019 is this big white stone tower, and it's
what you would think of as a lighthouse nowadays. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but 2016 is just wooden on stilts, it's just set up there I don't even know how to describe it. It's a cylindrical. It's not even a tower. It is just a cylindrical building on stilts that happens to have like the dome of a lighthouse on top of it.
Based on the haunting true story. So my guess is that the true story only like the one person died, but the other didn't.
According to the movie.
Right, but like I'm guessing that the 2016 one is more accurate to the true story.
There was a note at the end of the 2016 one saying that Tom Holder never recovered from this ordeal.
Right. So he lived, but
right, he wasn't the same ever again.
Yeah. Okay. I'm actually very interested in this movie now. But anyways, I think no reason to continue the podcast.
Yeah, I'm not good.
We already finished talking about the actual movie we're talking about a while ago. So anyways, thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Lighthouse podcast. We talk about Lighthouse movies, and that's all we do here from now on. So thanks for listening, everyone. Next week, we are going to start talking about a new TV show. We finished Justice League, which was our last one. So next week, we're going to start talking about the Netflix original series Castlevania, which I look forward to. Art style looks really cool. So I have no clue what it's about other than like it involves like vampires and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Based on the video game Castlevania.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that it was based on a video game. That's right. That's right. So very interested. So yeah, we're going to do the first season next week of Castlevania. And you can expect that on Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time, because every single episode of this podcast is uploaded on Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time, every Saturday, without fail, so far.
It's been close, but we've done it.
Yeah, it's been close. Somehow we made it 70 episodes. So,
yeah. 7.
Yep. Well, because last week was nice, and this week is 70. So yeah. And you can listen to the podcast on multiple different platforms, including our YouTube channel, which is called WABAN. There's a link in the description to that YouTube channel. And you can also listen to it on a bunch of audio platforms, including Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you'd like. It's called Nim TV. There's a link in the description to that as well. NIM TV. Talk about movies and such. So, yeah, I mean, if you like this podcast, which is all about movies, then you probably like my YouTube channel as well. So, anyways, thank you all for listening. I've been Nim.
And I'm Cub.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.